in this episode of AI and Data Governance with Dr. Vega.
We recognized that adoption was going to be challenging because people don't like change. They were steeped in their spreadsheets. And so we started our own community. We call ourselves the Data Watts. One of the things that I like to do is I like to tell them how they're going to be a part of what we're doing and see if there's a spark of excitement there. And I'm frank with them. I'm like, things aren't always glorious. Sometimes it's fail fast.
We're currently in Chicago, and I am visiting here with my friend Nadia Powell, Director of Enterprise Advanced Analytics at El Paso Electric.
I always ask myself when I do a project or a product or something like that, how am I going to measure success? And my measurement for success was an adoption rate. I love the people that ask the tough questions because I'll get better.
Welcome to the AI and Data Governance Podcast with Dr. Vega, where we explore the cutting-edge AI and data innovation technologies shaping the future of the electric utility industry. I am your host, Rolando Vega, and today we have an exceptional special guest joining us. We're currently in Chicago, and I am visiting here with my friend Nadia Powell, Director of Enterprise Advanced Analytics at El Paso Electric. Today we'll be gaining insight into how Mrs. Powell is promoting data-driven decision-making and ensuring that El Paso Electric leverages its data to maximize operational benefits. Nadia, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here, Rolando.
It is my pleasure. I have been looking forward to this moment for quite some time now.
Me too.
Let me share some of the most remarkable facts that I am able to find about El Paso Electric. And before we get started into the data and data governance conversation, so that we set the foundation for this dialogue, and we're gonna have an opportunity here to kind of hear what El Paso Electric is doing. El Paso Electric is an investor-owned electric utility serving over 456,000 customers across 10,000 square miles in an area across West Texas and the southern New Mexico. Behind the scenes, El Paso Electric is supported by a dedicated team of approximately 1,100 employees. And we're now going to learn about El Paso Electric, and who better than the CEO of El Paso Electric, Kelly Tomlin, who is going to be telling us about who is El Paso Electric and what is their vision 2045. We'll be presenting here a short film that El Paso Electric has launched with The Economist, highlighting this vision, and I am very excited to share this with you. Take a listen.
Electricity has changed everything, from our homes, from the workplace, entertainment, transportation, our economy. We fueled the economic revolution, the industrial revolution. We started with an electric car, but over time, we are using different fuel sources. We no longer use coal. We have bigger power plants. So I think our consciousness over the time is raised about our impact. We've grown bigger and we're more necessary, but we also are more cognizant of how we affect the total ecosystem. El Paso Electric provides energy to about 460,000 customers in a 10,000 square mile radius here in West Texas and in southern New Mexico. And we have contacts into people's homes because we do the billing and the customer service, but we also provide the generation, the transmission, and the distribution to their homes.
We serve about approximately 460,000 customers in the area. So we're always trying to verify that we try to plan for the growing needs of the community. And so we go ahead and update our load forecast to identify the demand. Greener resources are starting to play a bigger part. Advancements in technology that have allowed the reduction in cost for those technologies. That actually becomes very beneficial for El Paso Electric to move towards its carbon-free goals of getting to 80% carbon-free by 2035. Our integrated resource plan that we last did in 2021 and filed indicated that we would be adding over 500 megawatts of renewable energy over the next 5 years. The majority of that will be renewable energy resource, but in combination with other greener options also.
What a great time to be in the utility industry. I could not be more excited than being now a Texan after moving from Puerto Rico in the last 20 years ago. I can see how El Paso Electric is helping us lead the way for the state and the nation. I'm excited to dive deeper into this conversation. And Nadia, the first point of reflection here is when did you decide, and how was that process to decide that the utility space was the place where you wanted to develop your career, and then analytics? You know, what brought you into this field, and what brought you into El Paso Electric, and why do you love your job?
Yeah. It was kind of a bit of a tortured path, if you will, to get here, I think. I had done a lot of things before I came to the utility space, and then at some point in my career, my mid-30s and stuff, I decided, you know, I think I want to go back and I want to learn something new. So I went back to university. I went to New Mexico State University, and I was getting my master's degree in business at the time, and I was taking an economics course. And my professor came in one day and he says, hey, you know, if you want to go with this tract over here, which was a master's degree in economics with a concentration in regulatory economics, we've got 100% placement. And I thought, that's the deal for me. I need a job. So I ended up doing a dual master's and fell in love with econometrics. And I understood the value of being able to predict the future with data that you have. And so that kind of launched me. I started working with Southern California Edison right after I graduated, and then came back to the Texas region, and I worked for the city of El Paso for a little bit of time, and then finally got the job at El Paso Electric. And interestingly enough, when I started there, I was in regulatory. And I really feel like having a broader experience has rounded me out now that I'm in the analytics space. So I went from being in regulatory to being in power generation, where I really started to explore what is the data that we have, how are we reporting it, are we consistent in how we do that, and how is it being utilized back within the utility? So we were doing a lot of reporting to outside agencies and that kind of thing. But I was wondering, how do we use it internally? What are we gathering from our data? And so myself and a colleague of mine set about undertaking a pretty large endeavor. Actually, two other colleagues of mine put together a pretty large endeavor as our first foray into analytics, which, you know, looking back may not have been the best idea, but we were really passionate about being able to do the reporting that we had to do to outside agencies and do it in a more consistent fashion. And we put together a front-end piece where the people are now putting in the data rather than getting spreadsheets, and et cetera, right? So now everybody's putting it in a consistent manner. It's backed up with a database, and we can query that database, and we can do all kinds of different analytics off of it. And then on the tail end of that, we said we need to bring this information back into the company so that the generators can see what they're doing and how what their history looked like. It even started a little bit of a competition between their three plants, like who was the best and stuff. So, and then we put together as the final stroke. We put together KPI monitors, which are placed throughout the company, and these are monitors that have key KPIs for the company, like SAIDI-SAIFI, equivalent availability factor, time out of the gates for T&D and stuff, and they're placed throughout the company.
You mean like kiosks that were set up as TVs or displays?
They're set up as
around?
TVs,
Okay.
exactly. And they display some key performance indicators, and everybody is able to see those whenever they go by these monitors and stuff. And that was before the days of Power BI, and so we've made some improvements on that since then.
Okay, and it's interesting that you study economics, you went into econometrics. Can you maybe paint a picture of what is the difference between econometrics and economics for those that don't understand that?
So the way I look at it is the study of economics is more theoretical, the macro, the micro stuff. And then econometrics is really the leveraging of the data to predict something in the future.
Got it. Okay, fantastic. And so after all of that study, then you had a little bit of a, I don't want to say a tangent, but you went from econometrics into the regulatory component,
Right.
and then power gen, and then the reporting and the data.
Yeah.
That's kind of like your journey in a
It was
nutshell.
a little twisted, right?
And I love when we get to see the diversity of experience in the roles, in your position, where you're having to delegate and work with different parts of the organization. The more you have knowledge and experience from different parts of the organization, the better equipped you are to really not only empower the people in those areas, in those departments, but tap onto each other's capabilities to create a powerhouse of a team.
Yeah.
And I feel that sometimes when you have two focus, let's say we have a technologist who hasn't been in regulatory or doesn't have the economics background, and let's say is only IT, then that is the exposure and the experience, and then you have a very narrow path for those sort of leaders. And I think that it's a much better leadership.
I think so too.
Right? And
The people component became very, very important to me as I moved around in my career, because while the regulatory realm seemed familiar to me and it was what I kind of studied and stuff, when I went to power generation, it wasn't something that I knew at all. So I really had to start relying on the people component and others to help me understand what we were doing and what the business value was. And then that's just exemplified again when I went to analytics, because while I loved econometrics, it was more years than I'd like to tell you ago that I was doing that. And so today I have PhD level mathematicians working with me that help me with the real technical piece and the analytics piece. And so I struggled a little bit maybe with trying to find out, so where do I add the value? Where's the piece that I bring? And it was that you were just talking about. It was being able to tell them about the totality of how a utility runs and bringing a deeper meaning to the analytics that we were doing.
Meaning. We may have to go deeper on that, because there are some that argue that maybe in the years, maybe decades to come, as there is more of AI taking over of the responsibilities and the jobs, some, including even Elon Musk, stating that we may be confronted with a crisis of meaning in the years ahead, as people feel that so many components of their day-to-day job are being replaced with more automated AI-centric capabilities. And so, you kind of mentioning the word meaning kind of resonated with me for a moment.
Yeah.
Because I think that, as leaders, we are called to help people plug in, in the places of the organization where help is needed. And that's what you have been doing.
That's right.
And so for those in the audience that may be aspiring to be in the role that you are currently, in the future, having that diverse exposure will be key.
Yeah, I think so. I think having a diverse, not only a diverse learning exposure, but also different experiences with other people. If you travel around to other countries, or and even within the United States, right? There's different pockets of people in different parts of the United States that can bring such a richness to your experience, and it teaches you not to be afraid. And I think that's one of the key components.
I think I can have a lot of empathy for what you're describing, because I have also had to experience the same. It's a very humbling process, because the moment that you feel like your stuff, here is a whole new realm and a whole new area that is completely unknown to you. And as a leader, you need to adapt, and you need to go and find new knowledge, and again, begin like a student all over again.
Exactly.
Right? And I think that that's what you have been going through.
It is, particularly when it comes to data governance. That wasn't a field that I knew much about, and learning about that has been challenging. Doing that, it was kind of like going back to school and doing a full-time job.
Yeah.
But it has, first of all, I would love to learn. And so that was an enriching experience for me. and then trying to test out what I know with people who may know a little bit more than me. It's been nice hearing people say, no, you're on the right path.
Okay, so we'll keep wearing the learning hat in our jobs and in these conversations. So as we dive into, we already discussed kind of what took you to El Paso and a little bit about your journey and your background. What would you say were some milestones in that journey? You have covered some of the key moments. Would you consider any particular transition more difficult in that journey, or were they all kind of equally building towards where you are today?
So when I transitioned from regulatory to power generation, I actually was managing our relationship, excuse me, El Paso Electric's relationship with APS as it related to Palo Verde Nuclear Generating Station.
I see.
And El Paso Electric owns 15.8% of the output there, but we are not the operators. That's APS. There's 7 owners there, and all of that experience was completely new for me. And while I did have a colleague that worked with me who was a nuclear engineer who gave me a lot of the technical piece of it, I also had to establish relationships with APS and the other participants, because that was really important, particularly when you're talking about a nuclear facility, because they're highly regulated by the NRC. So we really had to work together to promote nuclear energy and then move forward as a group. And I don't know, if you've anytime you've probably asked 3 people their opinion, everybody's got a different one, right? So imagine now it's 7 people, what their opinion is about how the largest nuclear generating station at the time in the United States needed to move forward. You really had to forge some really good relationships, and you had to understand and be willing to go there and make the experience. So by way of example, I went to several of the outages that Palo Verde had, and I embedded myself with the workers. Now, they're not going to let me touch anything, right? But they did have a response team and a coordinating team that I was on, and really got to see how that worked. And I think that being willing to say, I don't know, but I'm happy to find out if you're willing to teach me, was something that brought all of the 7 owners together and made us gel as a team, really. And I really do feel like when my tenure with Palo Verde finally ended, we were a really good team. And that experience in itself helped me when I came back over to analytics. Because as you have taught me, and you're the voice in my head now, Rolando, it's about the people. So being able to relearn, if you will, how to forge the right relationships and ask the right questions, and being humble enough to say, I don't know, but I'm willing to learn on the analytics side has been invaluable.
So Nadia, on that people component, as you were describing this learning mode, the asking of questions, I know that that's a skill that is constantly, it's something that you're having to constantly relearn, because you do it once, you now acquired a new skill, a new knowledge, and now maybe the first time it feels kind of natural that you ask those questions and you immerse into this new topic. You're now made a part. You're welcome into a new team. You belong to this new little family here, and then you're having to do it again, on another topic, and then again you gain more family members, and so after a while you realize that, hey, this is something that I'm now getting used to, being embraced by these extended families. So I get it. You apply that for yourself. I'm taking a little moment to ask about, the people that you work with. How do you hire for this sort of mindset? And how do you promote this sort of mindset with the people that you work, recognizing that, hey, it's okay to have different personalities, different approach to life, introvert personalities, extrovert personalities. And so we all have a different mold, right? The way that we were created. However, you still want to promote the culture of a family, which is we help each other out.
Right.
How do you do that to identify the talent, but also to promote it in your own workplace?
I look for people who are curious. I think that's the key for me, making sure that they're curious. We recently had to hire 2 new people, and one of the people that they go through a bit of an extensive review process and stuff before we'll making them an offer. So I'm looking for people who are curious, and I identify opportunities where they might, like they brought something to the table. I'm like, that was interesting. That was a different way to approach something. So we recently hired somebody that really taught themselves analytics, and I thought that's an amazing skill, first of all, and he's really pretty good at it.
Okay.
I like people to fit into our community that we built, right? And so I need to make sure that there's a fit there.
How do you check for that?
I don't know that there's a single test for
Right,
that, right?
I know. I want to know what you do.
Yeah. I wish there was. We do have, HR does put them through some testing and stuff like that, and I'm at the top of my head, I can't remember what the name of that was. They do give you a score.
Okay.
And they'll tell you basically, and it's a pretty wide range. So they'll tell you, okay, these people have met this range, is pretty wide range, but they fall outside of those, then they're probably not a fit. And I think they're looking for a fit for the company, not necessarily for our team in particular.
Got it.
And it's difficult to do when you only have 1 or 2 interviews, right? So, yeah, I don't know. I can't tell you that I've perfected that. Maybe we've just been lucky. The 2 people that we hired prior to these ones were just an amazing fit. And I feel like these 2 new people will be an amazing fit too. One of the things that I like to do is I like to tell them how they're going to be a part of what we're doing.
Okay.
And see if there's a spark of excitement there, right? So, and I'm frank with them. I like that things aren't always glorious, and sometimes it's fail fast, and we embrace that as a team. And are you okay with that? I ask those kinds of questions. Are you okay with a little bit of uncertainty? Because as an analytics team, we're moving with the company as they switch gears to what they want to be analyzed to something else, or where their priorities are. So I need to make sure that they're going to be okay with that they can pivot, if you will.
Yeah.
And I ask questions around that. And, hope is not a strategy. So I won't say I hope for the best, but I do look for cues.
As you're describing your approach, it reminded me a few months ago, I got to see one of the franchise owners of Chick-fil-A, and he was talking about how they approach, the interview process and all of that. And what you were saying was resembling a lot of what Chick-fil-A's approach is, which in a nutshell is stress test. These sort of questions during the interview process, present them, not only try to promote the company as the best place to work, but this manager was saying, tell them about how ugly it can get.
Right.
And the way that they would describe it is they went at length to make it sound like you may not want to work here. It's going to be hot out here as people is coming through the drive-through. At times you're going to feel like this is very exhausting. And when you're in the kitchen, you're going to see these sort of situations going on. And it was like, I have felt in many of my interviews in the past as a hiring manager that I would, especially in the utility space, you see all of this great talent coming out of universities and you feel like, oh, we want to attract some of this great talent. And, and the impression that I guess sometimes we put in ourselves is like utilities may not be super fun for some of them.
Right.
Because we're not the fastest, right? And I feel like compelled to convince them why they should be working in the utility when in fact maybe the strategy is not that. Because I have now learned that you want to hire slow and at times fire fast.
Right.
You
That's
want to make sure that you have the right people in the team. And so this approach that the Chick-fil-A manager, which aligns kind of with your approach, which is tell them some of the ugly things that they may not like. It's actually not a bad strategy because it will ensure.
It's a partnership.
Yes.
They need to make sure that they want to be here too.
Right.
And they deserve to know what the entirety is of that job.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you for that reminder. I'll make sure that we don't decorate, only the amazing potential. Right.
My professor used to tell us, he goes, utilities is not sexy. That's the thing. Well, I don't really know what that means necessarily. And I love utilities.
Yes.
I think it's fascinating. I think that the business model particularly around a regulated utility, is difficult to understand. When we've brought in people from the outside who've not been in utilities before, the understanding the business model has been one of the biggest hurdles. And that's where kind of some of my experience in regulatory has helped me, because then I can kind of frame that for them.
Yeah.
I love utilities. I think there's something new around every corner, and you have to move sometimes you have to move the pace of your regulators.
Yeah.
At their pace of understanding, and that's okay too, because that gives us plenty of time to kind of test things out.
Yeah. Well, utilities is personally maybe the most exciting industry that I can think of to be a part of right now.
I agree.
Not only it has some consequential national security matters on the line, and you can get to be a part of kind of like the good guys. There's always kind of the bad actors and then the good actors, and you get to be, a part of those that protect, the nation, which means protecting the people in need, the weaker folks, the senior, the people in need, because without energy, I think that our country will collapse or would collapse very quickly.
Yeah.
That plus is ripe for innovation. There is so many great opportunities, right?
Yeah, we're at the cusp of transforming the energy future.
Yeah,
and that's an exciting place to be.
Most definitely. So as we reflect on some of those lessons in your journey, I'm sure that there has been 1, 2, 3+ people that have been key in your development. On the topic of role models, this is something that is very important to me, because I think that I know that from a parenting perspective, you get to display and demonstrate through your kids the good behaviors that you want them to repeat, right? If you want bad behavior, then do bad behavior, and they will get to see that. And so I ask all of the people that I interview this question on role models, because some of the people in the audience might be either the mentors or the people that need mentors. If you are among the people that need mentors, they can learn from the role models that you have had, because those are some of the things that have made a lasting impact in your life. If on the other hand, you're a little bit more senior or more developed in your career, then you can get to be a mentor that can influence and impact someone's life very much in the way that someone has made a lasting impact in you. And so I want to, if you can share maybe some experiences, some stories about your role models and why that has been important for you.
So my old boss, Andy Ramirez, he was the gentleman that I worked with when I first got to El Paso Electric in regulatory quite a bit. And he was the VP over power generation. He and I worked together on several cases, and he saw a potential in me. And he's the one that said, hey, look, we're going to have this position come open for director over Palo Verde, and I'd like for you to apply. And of course, he's not giving me the job or anything like that, but he's like, I'd like for you to apply. And so I started to think about, well, why me? And what did he see? And I got the job, which was great. And Andy was still there, and he kind of took me under his wing, because he knew I didn't really understand anything about the power generation side. And we would meet weekly and he would tell me about power generation. He'd make it real simple for me, and I got to ask all the questions that were popping into my mind, because I'm curious about everything, and I tend to have a kind of a stream of consciousness about questions that don't necessarily maybe fit a learning profile, but it learns for me. So I've got to say, he was probably one of the best mentors I've ever had. Elena Ball, which I think you know her as well,
yes.
right? So she was there also at El Paso Electric, and she allowed me to ask questions of like technical questions from somewhere outside of El Paso Electric, right? So she was in the ERCOT environment before, and I got to ask her about some technical questions, and she brought a different light to those things. I think the most empowering thing about Elena for me was that she encouraged me to continue to ask the questions. And today, I will tell you, because I am trying to kind of set up a foundation for data governance within El Paso Electric, I have peers within the utility, like Samantha Pixley from CPS, right?
Yeah.
Amelia Batters, you, as a matter of fact, Rolando, have all been really mentors for me there. Josh Berry, also from TVA, another great mentor. And I mean, these people actually will say, I will take time for you. Oh, Seaham from Austin Energy, too. They're, every single one of them, I've got a phone call with them monthly. And I go through each one of them. I've got questions prepared. We talk about the challenges that I'm facing. They tell me how they maybe overcame those challenges, and then I share some little bit of knowledge that I might have. And occasionally I actually find that I have a nugget for them that they didn't consider.
Excellent.
I love that mentor-mentee relationship. I love that you get to learn from each other.
That's outstanding. And I also learned that Utility Analytics Institute has created this program for mentors and mentees, which I will be enrolling here soon to become a mentor also. But it's a relatively new program, which I'm very excited about. I think that it's an amazing community that has been built in the Utility Analytics Institute, where what you're describing, is open to all utilities, that can share those lessons across the board. And it's very encouraging to see when people is helping each other in a very selfless way.
I'll tell you, when I was with the nuclear side of generation, I saw the nuclear fleet across the United States sharing and helping each other out like I'd never seen anywhere else before, and particularly in utilities. Many times in a traditional utility, people didn't want to share their information, irrespective of the fact that they were not in competition with each other, right? Because you had a certain service territory. But I saw that on the nuclear side, and I was amazed. I was like, we need to adopt this framework. And I've seen that adoption through Utility Analytics Institute and the analytics community that we have started here. I've seen that type of sharing. I'm so happy to be a part of that.
Yeah, and sometimes we wonder, on the topic of data sharing, this could be a whole conversation, maybe a whole podcast of its own. For instance, universities would like to have some of the information because they could innovate, they could help utilities. But there are certain areas of concern in just openly sharing. Data would have to be anonymized. And there is a lot of the bulk electric system and cybersecurity and all of that. So yes, there are concerns, but I think that it has been exemplified, many good examples where universities successfully establish alliances, and that information can be shared. And I think the Utility Analytics Institute allow utilities to kind of develop those ideas and share the lessons learned. And still, I feel that sometimes I hear, utilities say, well, this business unit here is kind of, very protective of their data, and they don't really, give me a chance to partner with them. Do you struggle with any of that within your company?
We do. I will tell you, 4 plus years ago, when we started really trying to get our feet wet in analytics, it was much worse.
Okay.
And today, with the help of our IT team, really, and great team members there, we have been able to break down a lot of those barriers. People are starting to see and understand what the value is of knowing their data and being able to visualize that in a different way. As you know, people learn in different ways, right?
Yeah,
And so some people really appreciate that, like Excel report that comes out that has just thousands of numbers on it, and they're trying to find the right number, I guess.
Right.
But most of us appreciate having that visualized so that we can make some quick decisions.
Yeah.
And once you start showing and sharing your data with other people, then they're like, oh, okay, so maybe this isn't so scary. Maybe we can allow you to do this. And I think the piece that most people are afraid of or cautious about is that somebody's going to take the data that they have curated and interpret it incorrectly. And so I think data governance helps out with that in some respects. I think we can find a way to understand what their fears are and mitigate those.
Yeah. And as I hear you describe the fears of sharing this information, interpreting information, inaccurately, it's definitely a danger that we have to be cautious about. As you're describing, I could also see that I don't know if the field that would address this is ethics or what really, but it's on the topic of leadership. I mean, you need to have bold leadership, and it's on the whole conversation of how do you give credit where credit is due, because in the university was the same way. When you saw issues in collaboration, is because there was someone who had put some time and effort, meaning an investment of their time,
Right.
and they have worked so hard to get to their peak moment, to display all of the great work that they have done. And they have been anxiously waiting for this moment when they can share with the leaders all of their work, right? And maybe someone along the way is coming and say, hey, could you share this beautiful data that you have created?
Yeah.
Because we want to use it in this other way. And this person is maybe feels stuck, like, hey, I'm in PowerGen, and I have been working with the PowerGen data, and I'm about to make my big splash. Who knows? Maybe this is something that helps my
chance.
promotion, my
Right,
chance, right? And somebody comes and takes that information, and if we had the embedded ethics and proper leadership to make sure that someone that is using this information will give complete credit and recognition,
Yes.
right? Where all of this great effort has been put, then people would develop, a natural desire to collaborate, because in fact you're multiplying the possible venues where you can get recognized. Now you not only get recognized for your PowerGen work, you can get recognized for this other work. So it would be good, but I don't think that we have all of these principles kind of, nailed
Not
down
yet.
in every company, right?
Yeah, not yet. You do want people to take personal responsibility for their work and for their jobs and stuff, and I agree that we need to highlight that and celebrate that. And so when you are utilizing somebody else's data, particularly a nice curated set, we need to give credit where credit's due, because that's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah. It's not easy. I think we can do a better and better ways that it can be done better. And that's what good leaders, will mentor and coach in this way, in asking the questions, where did the data come from?
Yeah.
And find who those partners are so that we lift them up. But I think that this is exactly what, some of the big AI companies these days are being now put under the scrutiny. Like, where did you get all of the data that you train your model on? I mean, is all of the data from a lot of artists, a lot of people who put a lot of, sweat and tears to develop their work?
Yeah.
And now somebody's taking advantage of it with credit. Where is the credit going?
Yeah.
They're not recognized now.
Right.
Big arguments that are going to come in the years to come on this, for sure.
I think so.
And very likely outside of the scope of our podcast today, but a very interesting topic nonetheless. I think that we, even before we get to the machine world of how do we deal with ethics, I think that we even have like step 1 and 2 of how do we deal with that same phenomena within our companies.
Yeah.
Inside.
Agreed.
So let's move to the topic of the great things. And I kind of paint the picture of great things are things that you planned for, and they went great, and you're reaping the benefits of your labor and all of the people's investment. So it turned out the way that you wanted it to be, or maybe even better. Those are the great things. And then we're going to turn our attention to the greater things, which is they didn't quite go the way that you intended, but you learn a lot nonetheless. Mm-hmm. And the reason I like to make the distinction of the two is because some people may say, well, good for Nadia on the great things.
Right.
They were just in the right place. They had a ton of investment from their leaders to do these great things. Okay, it works for them because of their circumstances.
Right.
And I hope, that folks listening are not dismissive of the great things, because, there is a lot of great things that we can adopt. But something I have noticed is that, the greater things, the lessons learned is something that everybody will resonate.
Right.
Because they want to see, what have you learned? I don't want to make the same mistakes. Mm-hmm. So let's start with the great things first. Can you share some of those initiatives, use cases, or case studies that you and your team have ventured to move forward and that you have been victorious at the end of the day?
Sure. So when we started our analytics journey, we really had kind of, it's like a three-legged stool. So one of the things that we wanted to provide was business intelligence.
Okay.
The other thing was advanced analytics, predictive analytics. And then the third thing was an educational piece. Yeah, and so we recognized that adoption was going to be challenging because people don't like change. They were steeped in their spreadsheets. They really loved that part of it. They had other tools that they were using, Cognos and stuff like that. Didn't really want to see a change. So we had to really tell people why would it be important to move to something different, and what's the value that brings. So we really put a lot of emphasis on how do we train people. And what I loved about El Paso Electric is we had some like pseudo data scientists or business intelligence people that maybe didn't have that title, but that were just super interested in that. And so we started our own community. We call ourselves the Data Watts. We branded ourselves. We've got T-shirts. We brand all of our products that we put out with our own logo on it and stuff, so that people can feel a part of the community. And then I brought in people to teach us. We did a 8 weeks analytics course. We did a lot of Power BI training, both introductory and advanced. We did DAX training also. And so we put all of that together in the first several years that we were an analytics team, because recognizing that our team was likely going to remain small. We were not going to be the company that did analytics all in one place, that we really wanted to espouse a citizen analyst within the company, and so that was our opportunity to do that. And of course, I always ask myself when I do a project or a product or something like that, how am I going to measure success? And my measurement for success was an adoption rate. And so since 2023, when we started actually looking at the data, till today, we have 78% of our people within El Paso Electric utilizing Power BI for their reporting needs. So that means either our team is building reports, or the power users, the champions, are building reports, and people are looking at them with an increasing frequency, I might add.
Wow, that's huge, and that has actually gone up a lot since the last conversation we had. So
it has. So I got some new data.
Outstanding.
In preparation for our discussion here, I'm like, let me get the latest and greatest.
Amazing. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you. I think it's a big thing. I think also if you look maybe at not discounting, but if you looked at people who maybe don't have regular access to a computer or maybe even a phone, that might be out in the field a lot and stuff, that number, and retracted that number actually goes up quite a bit. So we're probably closer to like 87% of adoption. So
you probably have a BI for the BI dynamics now, because you're wanting to analyze all of these.
We do.
Oh, yeah,
we
excellent.
Do. Yes, we do. We have usage log statistics.
Fantastic.
And our CEO really challenged us about that. She's like, it's all great that you're building these things, but are people using them? And so I had to figure out, like, okay, how do I demonstrate that people are using things? And we had partnered with some consultants that helped us out a little bit with that, got us the usage logs or taught us where those usage logs were, and now we've automated that process, and we're able to demonstrate those and visualize those usage logs. I think we do it like every 3 months. So it's a 90-day look. But we keep the historic stuff too, so that we can say, here's where we were, here's where we're headed.
Yep.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's one of the big wins for us.
exciting.
Like, it really was. I actually wasn't expecting it to be that large. I didn't know that we had that large of an impact. And then, so when the data came in, one of the reasons I love data, when the data came in, I was shocked and I was happy. Really
Wow.
happy.
So that really means that the organization is moving towards having, a shared, capability of information, sharing, which is in your BI. That I'm sure will or has been bringing some of its own challenges, because now, you at first you focus, it's like most businesses, you focus first on revenue generation and then you worry later on the profit side.
Right.
So you were focused on creating reports that, people would be using, and now you're probably going back and how do we refine? Maybe we created dashboards that could be consolidated into one, and, we're probably talking about hundreds of reports here.
Yeah, well, not hundreds of reports that our team has built, but certainly that the community has built.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, precisely.
Yeah. And so there are some things there that we are running into, and one of them is this idea that when reports, and now that we have the data to support that, when reports are no longer being utilized, we need a format to sunset that.
Yep.
And we haven't quite developed that yet. That is on my horizon for something very soon. So putting maybe a little bit of more governance around what we currently have and understanding that data. So when we talk about governance too, you're right. My approach when we started the analytics journey was, let's just prove that we can do something with data.
Yeah.
And we weren't necessarily concerned with where the data came from. Is this the source system?
Yeah.
We weren't asking those questions. We relied on the business unit that we were working with for them to say, this is where the data needs to come from. But I don't know if that's a shared understanding amongst all the business units. And so we need to start putting some confounds around that. Yeah, we need
But
to
this
start
is a
doing
good
that.
problem to have, though.
I think so.
I mean, it reminds me what I have observed, even playing, I'm not a big football, player, but I do realize that, in physics, you want to use the energy of the runner with that ball to kind of, redirect that energy so that they're tackled, right? With their own energy. And so I think that you have such a key set of strategic winning elements in the adoption of your BI, and you have created a community, which is, maybe the most significant asset here is the community, is the people behind it who feel empowered to use information to build. They're creating. Anytime you have people who are building, it's greater than the number of people who are destroying, right?
That's right.
So you're now building. You're in the building mode. And you have such a unique, beautiful opportunity to maybe define your whole data governance program around the winning strategy.
Yeah,
right? So. Because you have energy. Your football players are running.
They are.
Your citizen analysts are running, and they're carrying their own energy to move this forward. And all you need is to provide a little bit of guidance, to score a goal.
One of the other metrics that we look at is the expanding our reach into other business units. And with AMI, because you mentioned that early on, we've been able to expand our reach into other areas where we hadn't been before. So meter reading and meter testing, and kind of in the energy delivery space. And that's going to help us too. So they're adopting also for Power BI. And recently, about 4 months ago or so, I had a gentleman come and give a talk, a 2-day workshop actually, about data governance. And I wanted to level set. I wanted to for us all to have a common understanding of what data governance was and what it is not.
Yeah.
And that worked, I think. We had about 60 people across all departments come for the 2 days. And we all gathered an understanding not only of what data governance was and was not, but then we also focused on what are the things that we want to do with data governance. Because I got to tell you, Rolando, and I know that you've had this conversation for a very long time at CPS Energy to kind of get people around, coalesce around an idea. But data governance is a huge elephant.
Oh, yeah.
And so how do you narrow that down to something that people can communicate with? Really,
Yes.
it's about communicating with what you're trying to do. And so during that 2-day seminar, we really focused on the 3 things that people were most concerned about as it relates to data governance. And that will set the foundation for us to go forward.
Can you tell us what were some of those findings through this workshop?
Yeah, so we decided as a group, this 60 plus people, that we decided that we wanted to focus on data quality, data literacy, and data accuracy. That was our 3 main points that we wanted to attack with governance. We all recognized that we had gaps there, and we all wanted to fix them together.
Did this workshop also provide the definitions for the data access, the literacy, and the data quality? Or there were kind of high-level expectations that they were at the high level, you want to make sure people understand data from a fundamental, what does data mean, data literacy, generally speaking, and then data quality, we need to make sure that data is accurate. Generally speaking, and then on data access, we need to make sure that people that need access do have the access that they need. Was it like at a principle level discussion, or were they saying, I'm struggling with X, Y, and Z. I have been asking for access with this information, and I need the access. What's going on?
So there's a little bit of both. We didn't delve into the vehicles that are going to provide us with the solutions for those 3 things. We didn't really talk much about that. But defining where our pinch points were was really key and was provided the aha moment, frankly, for a lot of people to go, okay, this is what you're trying to get after with governance.
Okay.
So yeah, we did have some people going, every time I need access to something, I don't know who to go to. But that may not necessarily be an access problem. That might be a literacy problem. Maybe there's 2 strings pulling at that, because we don't know who's the owner of that data, or who is the steward that I need to work with for that.
Yeah.
So we really needed to define roles, and there's a whole bunch of things underneath that we felt like, okay, this is where we need to start.
Outstanding. Let's now transition to the greater things, those areas where people may be at the edge of their seat saying, what can we learn from Nadia, because we don't want to do the same mistakes again? Can you share some of those with us?
Yes, I will. So my journey for data governance is just starting. I don't want to give the impression that we're too deep into that. We are still trying to convince maybe the executive team that where the value is for these things. I had an experience when I tried to introduce advanced pattern recognition to the company several years ago.
Okay.
And I was super excited about this. I could see where it was going and what we needed to do, and didn't take the time that I needed to convince others. So even the people at Power Generation, they were skeptical of what could happen with advanced pattern recognition and whether or not it would really work. They kind of looked at it as like a flavor of the week kind of thing, right? And Nadia, who are you to say that this is going to work? And so I didn't give enough time or dedicate enough of my personal resources to convincing people or demonstrating to people why this was important. And I don't want to repeat that mistake with data governance. So I will share with you that part of my goals this year was to set up a data governance council in Q1, and then I started going, well, okay, what does that look like? And IT had me leading the data governance council, and I thought, well, what are we governing? What is this? How am I going to lead an organization or a committee? I have no idea even what we're governing. And that sent me down this rabbit hole of figuring out what does data governance really mean. And while I feel like I've gained a lot of knowledge, I'm not sure I've been successful or taken enough time to to educate other people about that. And so that's where we are today with data governance, is really about an education piece. And that's why I brought in somebody to level set us for a 2-day workshop. I'm going to continue that with pairing that with another initiative that we're doing. We're bringing in Maximo on the energy delivery side. And the company that is helping us with that is also setting up kind of a governance structure for the transmission substation and relay. And I've been talking with them about, okay, talk to me about you guys are setting up your own governance structure at the business unit level. How does the enterprise governance pair with that? What are your expectations of us, so that as soon as we do launch this, that'll be our goal. That'll be our North Star. We want to make sure that we meet the expectations that you have of us as well. And I think that will be better. I think that will be a better approach, even though it seems like it's taken a long time. Having the conversations, I didn't, certainly not when I was trying to do advanced pattern recognition, I didn't place enough value on building that understanding, a shared understanding with people about what it was going to do. And it also helps with breaking down silos. Something that I hadn't really considered when I started making these approaches to people and asking them questions and getting a view of their understanding. So one of the things I did before we had the 2-day seminar is I sat down with each one of the executives and I said, talk to me about data governance. I sent them like 3 questions. I said, here's the questions I'm going to ask you. I want you to talk to me about what you think data governance is. And where do you think we have the most gaps, given your understanding? And then what level of support are you willing to give us for this? And I thought that was really good. So I put all of that information together, as well as a short survey that I did for all the participants, put that information together. And with that, I was able to go back to the executive team and say, okay, here's what I'm hearing. Here's the 3 things that we want to work on: data quality, data literacy, data access. In addition to that, here's what these people are saying about their pain points, and here's what the executives are saying. Do we have common ground here? So having the conversations, framing that in a way that we all feel included, is going to set us up much, much better when we do launch data governance. And I believe we will. I know the executive team understands that there is value there, but there's a lot of competing priorities.
That's what I was going to get to. Yeah. What mechanisms do you have, or does your executive team have, to prioritize efforts that have a data component to it?
I think that is maybe one of the places where we could help the executive team understand that a little bit more. I'm going to refine our analytics roadmap a little bit and maybe do a little bit lower level, deeper dive into each one of those things and what's required, and then start another campaign to educate them about, well, these are the things that we're going to need. And I do believe that there are executives that understand the value of data. I'm certain that they all do, but for different reasons. Like, for example, our CEO is very interested in AI, right? So everything's AI. We had to do a kind of a training and learning experience there too. Like, you say AI, but I think you mean Gen AI, because that was the new buzz, right? Yeah. And so we had to kind of frame that. So AI isn't just generative. There's large language models, of course, with generative AI, the machine learning, neural networks. All of those things are AI, if you will. And from our point of view, we've been doing AI within El Paso Electric for many, many years now. What you're asking now is, can we also bring in the generative AI component, which is new? Yeah. And so now we've got to figure out what's the right way to do that. And we started out by really kind of doing a position paper. And what I love about El Paso Electric today, since we were bought by Infrastructure Investment Fund, is that they brought in this new dynamic CEO, Kelly Tomlin, that you saw, and an executive team that isn't afraid to take some calculated risks. And so we talked a little bit earlier about sharing data sets. Now I can go to one of the executives and say, hey, we're working with El Paso Community College. They'd like a data set. They want to do a hackathon. What can we provide for them? And immediately I get hey, I think we can do this, or hey, I think we can do that. I think having the ability to say, okay, we'll give that a try without the immediate response being no has been transformational for the utility itself. We've got great leadership.
What would you recommend to other directors in your role in other utilities in the way that they define their path forward? So you have now a set of lessons. You are kind of, you have done some restarts, to
Yep.
the data governance program. This may be beta release 2 of your data governance program, right?
Yeah.
And if you had to kind of give a point blank, advice to the directors in your role, what would that be?
Don't give up. Don't give up. It can be very challenging and in some ways tiring to continue to have to fight for something all the time, but there is the value there, and I think particularly for leaders who are maybe a little bit visionary, right?
Yeah.
And where being able to bring somebody along with that vision can be challenging, and sometimes you need to give yourself a break, frankly, right? So
Yeah.
you go after it. I didn't get what I needed. Let me step back. Let me reassess.
Yeah.
And maybe talk to a few people about what they didn't get, and then try another approach. And I have tried many approaches here, and I'll continue to try different approaches until we can get to a common understanding. I think it's back to how people learn.
Yeah.
And you have to find the way that they learn best in order to be able to transmit information to them.
How would you describe the coalition that you have been building over these many years? By coalition, meaning the advocates, the people in the organization who have been alongside, who are cheerleaders. What would you say about the shaping of that coalition? Because at some point, you will just have the right critical mass in that coalition for things to become a little bit easier.
So you find champions in places you never would have thought. Cheryl Melee is one of our VPs, and at one point she had said to me, what I thought was kind of out of the blue, hey, I'd like to talk to you about analytics winnings. Okay, let's talk about analytics winnings. And so we've established a cadence for these meetings. And what's great about her is that she's on many of the committees that are kind of looking at what I'm telling them about governance. And I can always, this is empowering for me that she does. And I don't even think she understands, although I've had chatted with her a little bit about it, but I don't think she understands just how grateful I am. But because I can look across the table when I'm saying something about data governance or analytics or whatever it is, and she's over there shaking her head, right? When you see somebody over there, I got it. I understand what you're saying. It feeds you, and it can make you more powerful to others when you've got those advocates. So look for advocates where you wouldn't expect one, because I wasn't expecting that out of Cheryl. And she approached me, which I will always be grateful for. So yeah, look for them in places where you may not have thought that person's probably, you can do those, the stakeholder analysis, right? And you're kind of off the top of your head, this person I think will be this person a champion, this person, no. But sometimes the people that you don't think care or don't have an interest are the people that are going to be your biggest champions.
Interesting. I remember one of the advice I got as a director, from other executives in the company, some other maybe higher executives in the organization was, Rolando, be very careful with the assumptions that you make. And it always, it stick to my mind, about, the fact that we all make assumptions.
Were they talking about assumptions in models or assumptions you're making
Well,
about
no,
other people?
it's about people.
Yeah.
Is that I think that some of the challenges that I encounter is that you know some parts of the organization may have resistance. You kind of know,
Yeah.
who the suspects would be, namely IT components,
Right.
right? And
They can
you
be
know,
a tough customer.
yeah. And so there are particular people in the organization, whether it's IT or in other parts of the organization. Some other parts of the organization that I saw resistance were, quite honestly, some of those that were a little bit more advanced, whom you would think, maybe they're willing to give us a hand to kind of go forward together and,
Yeah.
two horsepowers, two powerhouses,
Yeah.
going forward together. But no, I mean, sometimes the resistance is that they saw that this particular business unit, would be kind of the champions for analytics, and maybe they saw us as a threat, as we are defining a central analytics team, and you had these other hubs of analytics, and I saw a little bit of resistance on that. And so, but the point is, we all know that yes, you are in the business of building a coalition, people that can come along with you and kind of add the fuel to go forward. But then you also have to manage those that are, let's say, not only neutral, but they are the ones asking some tough questions. And
Yeah.
it was not until I realized that I was making assumptions about the resistors, that I was almost predicting. Essentially, I would be predicting quite often that because they have been resistors in these and these moments, that they're going to be resistors.
Yeah.
And I came into meetings assuming
Yeah.
that I just had to fight them.
Yes.
Right? And it became a matter of who are, the good guys and the bad guys, right?
Right.
Into the
Choose your camp.
Yeah, choose your camp. And it didn't need to be like that. Yeah, I think that it was an aha moment for me when I realized that actually those that were challenging me were the ones who made me grow
Yes.
a lot.
I love the people that ask the tough questions. I love that. I expect people and want people to look at the data that I bring them and try to poke holes in it.
Yes.
Because I'll get better that way. I like those people. Now, I might go away a little demoralized, but I'm going to at first.
For sure.
But I'm going to come back with
Yes.
something that's better.
Yes, definitely. And I think that I have like you, learned to kind of go with the flow. I ended up kind of leaning into it. And they would, I would be proactively, sharing with them, hey, I'm thinking about these, what would be the main struggles that you think
There
I
you
will
go.
have? And I would lean into it. Instead of making assumptions, I would go and ask questions. And it was a very enriching experience for me.
Yeah.
So fantastic. Now, tell us about the future of utilities in AI. Here, I will have the question from the last person I interviewed in just a moment. But before we get to that question, what would you say? It's paint a picture of the utility of the future. How will El Paso Electric be operating in, let's say, 5 to 10 years? Imagine that you can acquire and recognizing that we're not as fast as the Silicon Valley or anything like that, but assume that you will be able to adopt some of the newer technologies. Paint a picture of how your people embrace, evolve, adapt. What would be good? And I'm not saying that all technology should be embraced 100%.
Right.
But try to paint a picture of that future for me.
So what I have found about the people that work for El Paso Electric is they're curious, which is one of the things that I look for when I hire somebody, but they're very curious. And we did a little bit of presentation about AI, but the global AI, and more specifically about Gen AI, and people were really curious about that. So what I think we'll see in the short term is greater adoption of just your regular Chat GPT, your Copilot. we have some limited licenses right now for Copilot, the paid version, if you will.
Yeah, yeah.
And people are really enjoying that. They're like, this is really great. Now, having said that, we've got other people that are saying, hey, look, there's these risks to that. So we need to temper that, our enthusiasm for adopting these kinds of technologies with okay, yeah, there's a risk, and how tolerant are we of these certain things.
Yeah.
But overall, the company has embraced technology. That is their tenet. They will embrace technology. They want people to start utilizing new technology, particularly Gen AI. We did an innovation challenge recently, and there were about I take that back. I think there were about 3 people that had put in kind of a generative AI opportunity, and then as we started exploring those, several more came up. So we've got 5 what I think are very solid opportunities and use cases for generative AI today. Probably our next step there is to understand what the requirements of all of those are, of all of those people that have a generative AI use case, and then start evaluating which one we want to do as a proof of concept, which one is going to bring the most value the quickest. And then we'll likely go out maybe for an RFP to find a vendor that can partner with us to bring those things to fruition. So I'd say in the next 5 years, you'll see a lot more large language models being utilized at El Paso Electric. I'd also suspect that like imagery and drone imagery and pictures and stuff like that, I've heard a lot of utilities utilizing that now. I think we'll also start to adopt there, because that's a very rich environment for data and understanding our assets, and asset health is particularly of importance to us. So I think we'll also see a lot of movement there. And then our advanced pattern recognition is going to be taking off this year. I'm really hopeful that people will be wowed by what it can do. The great thing, and maybe the detractor for advanced pattern recognition, is how do you prove what didn't happen? And so when you're predicting that a piece of equipment may run to failure, and you go in and you intervene, how do you prove that this could have been a magnificent wreck and it would have cost you millions of dollars, right? So the gentleman that took over that project for me, Tim Wu, great guy, great engineer. I'm sure he's got a handle on that and a pulse in making sure that we are capturing those events and then categorizing them correctly. But I really do. I have a lot of hope that will also be one of the highlights of the next 5 years, and that people will be like, okay, now I get it even more. Doing dashboards for people for operational data is one thing, but then doing advanced pattern recognition with operational data, I think, has just put us another step ahead. Pi data also, we're looking at, we finally have a centralized Pi at El Paso Electric, and that has opened up a whole new world of data for us.
That's huge.
Yeah, that is huge. And then AMI data. People have told me, as I've been to utility analytics for years, have told me, like, once you deploy AMI, your analytics are just going to soar. There's going to be so much demand and stuff.
Yep.
I hope that there is. We have a foundational use cases, about a set of 40 about foundational use cases that we identified before we started deploying. We've got 13 of those use cases completed today, and those are mostly geared towards deployment, so identifying issues during deployment, like no reads after install, or electric hot sockets and that kind of stuff.
Gotcha.
So now we're going to go to the maybe a little bit more sophisticated things. So today, and when I say today, I really meant today, but I think we were a little bit delayed. We have an EV detection dashboard that we're putting out also. So
nice.
once people start seeing what the data can do, their minds will go crazy. Now, the caveat is that many machine learning models or even dashboards, right? These require a significant amount of data. And since we've only started deploying in 2023, we likely don't have enough data for a model with a good confidence level.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean we can't build a model and refine it as we move along.
Right.
But communicating with people that this is probabilistic and not deterministic, and setting those expectations ahead of time will be key for us.
Wow. You guys have a big pipeline ahead.
We do.
Those are a lot of big milestones once you get to each of them, and you're tackling a lot of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah,
we
that's
are.
exciting. That's exciting.
It is, and the people that work with me are excited about it too. So I have a lot of hope.
Okay. Let us get to the question that we had from our last leader. So the question is, what sort of future do you think? Maybe I guess it comes down to the probabilities here. What is the probability that we will have a future of AI where AI will evolve so much that it will become like like the movie The Matrix, where essentially we're being used, to their existence, as energy batteries, or some form of an input into their bigger plot. That's one scenario. The other scenario is, not only they use us, but they are actually against us, like in the movie The Terminator. And the other one is like in what is the other name? iRobot? iRobot. And I guess, there is a brand new movie, The Wild Robot. What is that the name? The latest Disney movie?
No, not Disney. DreamWorks.
DreamWorks, The Wild Robot, beautiful movie, where the robot is given a mission, and as long as the mission is a philanthropic, good cause for humanity, the robot will optimize everything and will do a lot of good for the world.
So
It's kind of a funny question.
yeah, and I don't want to. Maybe I'm looking at things through rose-colored glasses,
Okay.
but I think that option C, the iRobot option, is where we'll go. I look at it like a foreigner coming into the United States from a different country, and we have mass migrations for people from various parts of the world that come to the United States, and at first it's a little clunky and people don't quite know where they fit, but somehow they manage to find their footing, and they become a piece of the American fabric, and that's where I think AI will be. It'll be a piece of the American fabric. Now, if either of those other scenarios was the case, we would have to allow that, right? We still control that today, and so I think that there are people far smarter than me are looking at that and probably promulgating rules and regulations around that. There's always going to be your bad actors, so we'll make sure that we have some guardrails in place for them. But I'm very, very hopeful that AI will enrich our lives and maybe give people an opportunity to do the fun things that they want. Like somebody asked me, why can't we have a 4-day work week and have more days off? Well, I don't know. Why can't we? Can we do that with leveraging AI? Can we leverage robots or chatbots or any of those kinds of things to enrich our lives?
Yeah.
That's where I think that needs to be placed. It needs to be an enrichment for our lives.
Most definitely. And we will want to finish this podcast on a happy end note. I happen to think that there is a very high probability that it's probably much higher than 90%, that the greater good will be, we will find a greater good through these technologies. And maybe we'll keep for another day and another conversation. What if, the 1%, the 2%, or the 5%, the risks are still there, whether it's the bad actors or, the villains. I think, it's good that we continue to provide the younger generation with great work experiences, that they continue to have diverse exposure to culture, to backgrounds, to operating areas in the company, because I think that even though AI will have a lot of, will play a bigger role in our lives, we still need to, fight the potential risks of the bad with the good people working to help us, protect the things that we
Absolutely.
want to protect. So we have a lot of good people in this world. That
I agree.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's far more good than bad.
Oh, yes.
And we'll prevail.
Yes, indeed. What is the question that you think I should be asking our next person that we interview, the next leader?
So in my office, I have idea paint on all my walls, right? And so I can take a marker and I can write on all my walls. And I swear, if anybody walked in there, they'd think it was like part of the beautiful mind, because there's not a surface that's not written. I haven't written on. But there is one thing that is in front of me, just over my monitors all the time, the question that I need an answer to, and the question that I ask myself a lot, and the question that I ask our executives. What is the price of not knowing? I think there's a lot of dimensions to that. I think the applicability is across a lot of different areas. But what is the price of not knowing?
You caught me there. I need to think about that one. Because in a way, you're asking to put a price to knowledge. Okay. I will digest on that. Do you have
Okay.
do you have your projected answer?
I don't.
You don't?
I don't. I literally don't. I think that's why it's on my board staring at me every day. What is the price of not knowing? I don't have the answer, and I think it's different depending upon what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So if we come full circle and you looked at governance, what is the price of not knowing whether or not your data is accurate? Like you could probably monetize that.
Yeah.
Right? So there might be fines. There might be reputational challenges also. There's certainly time trying to chase down the right data, the most accurate data. There's a lot of that, right? So, and when you talk about price, it may not always just be dollars. It might be something more personal.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, there are so many different scenarios I can think of. And I have, real life examples, within a utility environment, that I have observed where sometimes the risk of knowing could be so great, right? Like, sometimes I tell my wife, sometimes I don't want to know all of the harm that the ingredients in the nutrition facts behind the label, are doing to me. You know what? I just want to enjoy, whatever it is that I see that is very delicious. Yeah, let me. Sometimes, I think I am kind of willing to be ignorant, but, to be honest, I don't think that is a very wise, answer.
Long run, maybe not.
Right. Maybe the exception.
Short run is fulfilling. Long run, probably not a great idea.
Okay. Yeah. And I have seen how this, also applies. I mean, you could be stopping yourself from knowing certain things about your data because the moment you know, there is a liability and you have to do something.
Yeah.
And a utility cannot solve all of the problems at once.
True.
So,
True
yeah,
story.
it's a phenomenal question.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, yeah.
And thank you for being here with us.
It has really been a pleasure. First of all, it's always great to chat with you whenever I see you, Rolando. And I just want to reiterate again what a great inspiration you have been for us and for EPE in launching our analytics journey. I can't thank you enough for being a partner with us on that.
Where you guys are amazing. I have seen your people, working like a family, as I have mentioned before. I really admire how your people stick together, how each other support each other, and how you lift up your people. There are a lot of great things. A lot of great things to be proud of, and I think they have a great leader. So
thank you.
Phenomenal. Well, there you have it, folks. Thank you for joining us today, and until next time.